All right, it's a big one. Friday episode. What in the world is going on with these torpedo bats? We're going to dive in, break it down. Plus, 7 games. The Blue Jays look good. The Mets are next. What can we expect?
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code Locked On MLB for $20 off your first purchase. As always, I'm Braden Wasco. He's Carter First, and he's Skylar Peters. You can find us on Twitter, Braden5 Wasco, Carter First 2, Skylar A. Peters as well. Just so all of you know, we have gotten the Locked On Blue Jays Twitter account. It's been a year. It took a while. We're here. We got it. We're back. We're buzzing on there. So make sure you guys go and follow Locked On Jays on Twitter. That is us. We're going to be super active on there, super active on our personals, but that one's now going to be our main focus. So go follow us on Locked On Jays on Twitter. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. As well, if you're new here to YouTube or you're listening anywhere else, hit that subscribe button on YouTube. It helps us out. You guys get your videos, your podcasts, your shorts, your live streams, the whole ordeal. Boys, big episode. Skylar's back with us for this one because this is an important one. This is a make or break moment for the MLB and what they decide to do with these torpedo bats. It's taking over the league. We've seen other things like this happen in some other sports, where a new piece of equipment, new piece of technology comes out, and we have to ask the question, does it cross a line? And I think, we have to bring the boys together, get everybody's opinions, and plus we're going to break down exactly what these mean, not just for the Blue Jays, but for the entirety of the league. Carter, if you want to start off, what is a torpedo bat? What makes it so controversial? And I'll go into the actual rules in regarding these before we get into our thoughts and opinions on these.
Yeah, this has been one of the biggest storylines of the first week of the Major League season. And when the New York Yankees set home run records using this bat, you're probably going to have to talk about this at some time for your podcast. But what is torpedo bat? One of the biggest things that we've heard about. It's pretty much a customized bat that tailors the shape of the barrel to each hitter. So we'll go over kind of some examples on how this is supposed to be applied for the major leagues. But these bats kind of look like bowling pins. They move some of the mass from the end of the bat and they put it more in the middle of the bat to increase the sweet spot. And pretty much try to skew it to each hitter so they have the best chance of making the best contact of their ability. So a guy like Anthony Volpe, for example, this is a guy that was getting the ball hit off the label a whole lot. He was getting the pitches inside. He wasn't able to spread the barrel to the ball. So what they did is they took some of, again, that mass from the end of the bat, moved it a little bit closer to the label, made that sweet spot closer to that label of the bat, close to his hands. And now Anthony Volpe has 4 home runs in 20 at-bats. So Anthony Volpe, I think he had like 10 home runs, give or take, last season. Clearly, it's working out pretty well for him. But Braden, give us some insight on like what qualifies as a proper Major League bat. Is this cheating? Like, what is the whole nonsense going around with these torpedo bats and this big scandal?
Yeah, so here's the breakdown. The bat maximum length is 42 inches. The barrel diameter that you can have is 2.61 inches. There's no specific weight that bats have to be. And it must be a single piece of solid wood, maple, birch, or ash. And for those of you who played and, you want you tested out which bats you like when it comes to them, there are different different things that go along with it. I think maple is the main one that people use. Ash is a little bit different, and birch gives it a little bit more. It's a little bit lighter, and it has a little bit more give in the birch bats. So this is Rule 302 in the MLB's handbook. The bat shall be smooth, round stick, no more than 2.61 inches diameter, no longer than 42 inches, and it has to be one piece. That's the main thing here. Now, when you look at all of these rules and regulations around these bats, the bats are legal within the rules. Now, the question comes to be how far down the bat and thick down the bat or is this barrel allowed to be? Because that's the big question, and that's where there's no specific rule as of right now, is that the width of the barrel, they don't also talk about the width of the handle or the width of the neck of the bat. There's no specific ruling in those. So where you move the sweet spot on the bat, there is no definitive rule in the MLB handbook as of right now. So it is a little bit of a gray area. And I just want to say, these Torpedo bats, they were invented by MIT professor Aaron Lenny Leonhardt. He got hired by the Yankees organization to take a look at, hey, what can we do with bats to help these players out? And so it really begs the question, and maybe it's not a black and white answer. Maybe it is a little bit in the gray here of, as fans of the game, are you okay with this kind of thing? I know I saw guys like Dave Portnoy go on Fox and talk about these things, and he was completely against them. I guess I want to ask you guys where you stand. I'm gonna cap things off with my opinion, but Skylar, I'll throw it to you first. Just your overall thoughts and opinions on this. I mean, it in your head, is this fine and legal, and you're totally good with it, or are you? We got to get these things out of the game.
Well, first of all, I have Anthony Volpe and Jazz Chisholm on my fantasy team, so I think this is completely fine. This has been great. I dominated the league in week one, thanks to that Yankees 20-run, 9-home-run game against Nestor Cortez and the Brewers, obviously. But, it's just one of those things. This isn't like a team using something to their advantage that only they can have. Like, obviously, we saw Davis Schneider was the only Blue Jay who had a kind of torpedo bat in the arsenal. This is something that, baseball players have known about for quite some time. It was a new concept to me as a baseball observer, but I don't think this is really outrageous. And I think in this era where we want excitement as MLB fans, we want runs, I think that's good for the game. Yeah, like obviously, the pitching guild is going to be pretty upset about this. This is going to inflate some stats, but as it stands right now, I don't really see a problem with it. Every team can use this technology. I don't think it's really that new. I saw an Instagram reel of an Easton metal bat with the kind of the torpedo shape. Guy pulled it out from the shed, and it was about 20 years old. So I don't think this is something that suddenly come on the scene and it's caught everybody by surprise. I just think, if it suits the hitter, if it's a pitcher or a batter that barrels a lot of balls, and they think it can get some more power out of those type of swings, then I'm kind of fine with it, to be honest. And I'd love to see more Blue Jays take advantage. And I think if we don't, I think the reason is because those guys are putting the bat on the ball in the sweet spot right now, and I think that's what we're used to from at least the top of the Blue Jays order. So maybe they should use a torpedo bat, just given how the first 7 games have gone. But yeah, I really don't see a problem with it. I kind of this reminds me of the juiced ball of 2019. Like, we were just seeing all these home runs, and all of a sudden, at the All-Star break, they switched it. Could I see a mid-season rule change for the bat? I'm not so sure. A little bit different than MLB switching out the ball that, every pitcher grips, every fielder handles, that sort of thing. But right now, I mean, if it leads to more excitement and every team can do it, I'm all for it.
For me, I would love to discredit anything the Yankees are going to do. You put up 9 home runs. I would love to say that they were cheating in that baseball game, but I cannot say that in good conscience. I think this is very similar to like in hockey, where you have certain flexes in your stick. You have certain curves on your stick. You're just trying to prioritize what is the best option for you, for yourself. In the MLB terms, if you're a guy that is making predominantly most of his contact off the inside of the bat, and you are within the legal rules of the game to change your bat to give you a little bit of an advantage, why can't you do that? If you like a specific curve in hockey, you go with that. You like specific flex in hockey, you go with that. So I don't think this is a crazy thing that is brand new to the MLB. Giancarlo Stanton used this last year for the New York Yankees. And again, this is just, they're trying to take a sport that is very hard, one of the hardest sports in all of like humankind. Baseball is it's proven to be one of the hardest things to hit a baseball. So to make it even just a slightly bit easier for these hitters, again, they're still having to hit this baseball, still having to hit 100-mile-per-hour balls, sliders, changeups, you name it. I think at this point, if you can just have it a little bit cured to these hitters, and they're still within the rights that MLB kind of laid out for them, I don't think this should be a problem that any MLB fan is making a big argument about.
Yeah, a couple things. I got asked about this by a lot of people over the past week or week and a half now, in my opinion, because, grew up playing the game, coached the game, fan of the game, and people ask me, is this ruining it for you? And I would say absolutely not. When I look back over any sports league that you want to say, there are things like this that come around. And we talk about adaptability, right? Batters have to adapt to a new pitch that comes in onto the scene every once in a blue moon. Pitchers have to adapt to how certain hitters start to hit the baseball. I mean, you look at how the swing of a batter has developed, even how the bats themselves have developed, right? We talked about the axe bat, the knob of the bat changing, certain things like that. So I don't really see a whole difference here. I think as long as it's in the regulations of the rules, you look up and down the rule book, and it doesn't cause any problems, I think this is totally fine. At the end of the day, what's working for the batters right now is pitchers don't know how to face this kind of bat in comparison to how they would have pitched before, right? You want to pitch in on the hands, you want to saw a guy off, and right now this bat is helping to avoid that problem. But what is it taking away? Well, it's taking away if you catch a ball off the end of the bat. So if you see a guy with a torpedo bat, as pitchers, you're going to have to start to develop to maybe try to pitch on the outer side of the plate and catch them off the end of the bat. Because what usually happens is if you catch a guy on the inside, it's going to saw them off and possibly break the bat. Now, guys who get it on the outside of the bat have somewhat of the same problem, right? You catch it right off the end, and that's how it splits. I broke a bat like that when I was younger. That's what this is going to have to move to. It's not going to just be, pitchers already do this. It's how do I pitch this specific guy? And not everybody in the league, like Skylar said, is using these bats. It is 100% a choice to each player. So at the end of the day, if you know that Volpe is coming up, okay, well, I'm going to try to maybe pitch fastballs outside to catch him off the end of the bat where that sweet spot isn't. Because now, again, you have that bulge, and then it goes and sort of shrinks off again. So this is all about adaptability. And I think in a year's time, we're not even going to be thinking about this. It's just going to be another bat that's come on the market like the axe bat. I remember all the kids around the time, around a high school baseball, when they made the switch to metal bats in high school, every kid was going to buy an axe bat because they thought it was the next wave of hitting. And then the thick, whatever it is, like the round sort of handle, kids started to switch to that when they saw some players use it. And all this stuff falls by the wayside eventually, and maybe it is the next wave, but I just highly doubt it. So I think there's a lot to go into this, but I definitely think as long as it is in the rules, it's all about adaptability, guys.
I think I got 3 quick points. One, I think when we're sitting here in September, not even as a Blue Jays podcast, but like as a podcast of people that watch the MLB, the torpedo bats probably won't be in the top 5 things we talk about when we think about the 2025 season. 2, and this is a question: how many teams do you think scored 20 runs last year, or how many times was 20 runs scored? I guess it was by 3 different teams. So how many times do you think that happened?
I'm going to say 3.
I was also going to say 3 as well.
3, and 1 was in Colorado, which is fair, and the other 2 were basically at sea level. 1 was in Miami, and 1 was in Southern California. I can't think it wasn't the Dodgers, but it was one of those teams too. So it's not really the Yankees went out in the first week of the year and everybody's fired up for the MLB. They scored 20 runs. They hit 9 dingers. They also have a very short porch. And I think that benefited them a lot. Like if this would have happened in May, I'm not so sure this is like such a big story. So I'm really not convinced that like any wholesale rule change is coming or anything like that to the torpedo bat thing. And then the third thing, to add another layer to baseball, which is I think the one thing that I love the most about the sport, is it's so integrated, and you can watch the game and enjoy it, or you can really be dialed in like people like us and enjoy it. What if Anthony Volpe takes the torpedo bat for the first 3 at bats for let's say he's facing Daulton Francis, because that's a guy he typically barrels the ball off of, and this is completely speculation. I don't know if the stats back that up. And then he's facing a guy like Jeff Hoffman or Yimi Garcia, and all of a sudden he switches back to his regular bat because maybe Jimmy's trying to pitch him inside, and then all of a sudden those pitches are back on the outside, and he's got the barrel of the bat where or the meat of the bat where there is the most power. I think that just adds another layer to this whole conversation. I think it's gonna be an interesting thing to follow. But I think at the end of the day, it's just a blip in time. And I think we are, kind of looking for something to follow in the MLB in the early going. And yeah, the Yankees teed off on Nestor Cortes. Would any one of the 3 of us sit here and say that Nestor Cortes had great stuff? in that Saturday start against the Yankees, and he was really burned by the torpedo bat? No, he sucked. He gave up 3 homers in the first 3 pitches of the game. You're not doing that if you're throwing good pitchers. So I just think it's a little bit overblown. It's an interesting conversation, and I really don't think we're going to look back at this as like a watershed moment for the MLB or anything like that.
Yeah, Skylar, you brought up a very interesting point of this swapping between bats, because that is 100% what could happen. I think back to my time playing. I was a Marucci guy through and through. That is what I used always. I had I think the Rizzo, which I used most of the time. For those of you who remember the Rizzo and who kids don't use wood bats anymore, it's all metal. But it was an awesome bat, a little bit more end heavy, but for a smaller guy like me, and I needed a little bit more pop, so I used that. But if a situation called for it, I had the Jose Bautista as well. It was a little thicker all the way through and through the bat, and if I was looking to, I needed a slap single or I needed to get something going, I had a little bit more contact control with the Jose Bautista bat, and so I would use the two. And I would switch between, hey, what do I need for this specific scenario? And yes, not everybody can do that. I was a high average, I'm not hitting nukes out there type of guy. So I had a little bit more control over which bat I wanted to use. And that is 100% something that I could see happen in the MLB is what situation calls for which bat? Am I going to try to swing for the moon here? Is this guy pitching inside? Is this guy leaving some over the outer side of the plate? So, Skylar, that's a great point. Hat tips to you on that one.
Yeah, and there's another thing that we haven't really considered is that obviously the Yankees had a lot of success with this bat. They aren't the only team obviously using this bat as well. Just to rifle off some names, O'Neill Cruz using this bat, Ellie Dale Cruz using this bat. That's kind of a bad example because he absolutely launched with the torpedo bat. But Nico Horner, Ryan Jeffers, obviously like you brought up, David Schneider's using it, Dansby Swanson, Jose Trevino. There's a ton of guys throughout the league that are using this bat. They have the option to use this bat. It's not just a Yankees thing. I get there is some backlog with the ordering, so I think the Yankees got a lot of their stock before a lot of these other teams, so maybe that is a little bit of an advantage. But again, it's early in the season. I agree with Skylar. I agree with you guys. I don't think we're going to be talking about this too much more as the season does progress. And another big thing here too is if FanDuel, if Betway, if all these betting sites are making a separate line for torpedo bats and they're juicing up the totals, saying that's going to be easier to get a hit with a torpedo bat and rolling with that narrative, that's probably not easier to hit with a torpedo bat. They're a business. They're trying to make money. They're trying to make money off people that believe that obviously this is an advantage. And I feel like as soon as you have that with a betting site or any sort of company that's trying to, build money and get a profit off of some of these lines, it's just an insane thing to think that this is actually giving some sort of advantage to a lot of these MLB teams. Another thing is, throw to you, Skylar. I got one
more thing. Just real quick, and then you can go back to your last thing. I heard you say this on Thursday morning's pod, and I actually laughed out loud when I heard it when you mentioned the FanDuel lines, because I think the three of us could probably fund FanDuel's overhead for a year. Like, it's not built on winners, right? So the fact that they're seizing the moment and, betting sites are taking advantage of this, it's the hot topic right now. It's April 3rd, boys. Like the Blue Jays are a division leader. These are all things that could whittle away very quickly. So I just think that that really illustrates the grasp that this is a very brief moment in time, I think, as far as the MLB season goes. And we've got 8% of it done? Not even that. No, 4% of it done. We got a long way to go.
Oh, there is a long way to go, is right. And the last thing I was going to say is that kind of going along with this chess game that you brought up is that if you're a pitcher like Jose Berrios, for example, you're facing lefties, you have a sinker that kind of breaks to the right side of the plate. You have a guy using a torpedo bat. Maybe you're throwing more pitches that are breaking away from these hitters and they're allowing that ball to get closer to the end of the bat to get that weaker contact. Same idea other way. If you have a right-handed hitter, same thing, using a torpedo bat. If you're Jose Berrios, you might throw more slurves. It's breaking away from the bat, breaking away from that sweet spot, and in theory should allow for less hard contact. But I'll just open up the table one more time. Anything else anyone wants to add about this torpedo bat discussion?
I just think on that last point, like if you're a starting pitcher and you have your go-to pitch like Jose Berrios does with the slurve, I think it really advantages them at the end of the day. Like it's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period, but if your breaking ball is like your meat and potatoes and it's why you're a starter in Major League Baseball, at the end of the day, like give it like 3-4 starts, especially when teams aren't trotting out 9 guys with these bats. If you give it a little bit of time, I think they're going to find a way to take advantage of this. And I think pitchers always win. It's a reason why we've seen run totals in the MLB go down over the last decade and a half. And I just really think that this is a very very brief moment. I'm excited it got us talking about it, but I really don't think this is going to last.
Yeah, it is an interesting, at least thought experiment for all of us baseball fans, and really being able to dive into it, right? You don't get the entirety of every single MLB team's fans all talking about one thing very often. So it is cool. It is cool. Let us know what you guys think of it down below in the comments section. Hit us up on Twitter, whatever you want to do. We'll answer some questions. We've sort of broken down some of the ruling, but we've done a lot of looking into this as well. I'm hoping to hear back from a couple places just to get some more insight on how production and everything is going with these as well. A lot more to talk about. We're going to get Skylar's thoughts on the first 7 games of the series, what he thinks as well. We got a series to preview. The Mets, the Blue Jays. Let's talk about it.
Today's episode is sponsored by Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site that's made for the skilled trades, supplyhouse.com. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the most reliable way to order products online. The easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands, you'll always find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always find a real person to talk to. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, the free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That is SH5 for 5% off your first order at supplyhouse.com.
Well, I'm going to talk about Just Ingredients. I absolutely love them. When it comes to fueling your body, quality matters. That's why Just Ingredients is changing the game with clean, high-quality products designed to support better health and peak performance. I've talked about it. I have their protein and their pre-workout, which I'm using constantly because it is the best. It makes me feel the best. I don't feel I don't drink any of them and then feel sluggish afterwards, or some other brands I would, or just heavy. It doesn't give me that feeling. Just Ingredients offers an NSF certified line of protein powder, like I said, electrolytes, pre-workout, and creatine, all rigorously tested to ensure they're free from substances banned by athletic organizations. Just Ingredients has partnered with 2-time MVP Bryce Harper, who trusts their NSF certified line to fuel his training and recovery. Visit justingredients.us and use code LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off. And for more wellness tips, follow at justin.ingredients on Instagram. I'm telling you guys, this is the best in the business. Give them a try. All right. I got Peters laughing, I think, on that one. But, oh, sorry. Hold on. I got you muted. There we go.
I literally said, thought in my head that you were going to say, for more fitness tips, follow Braden5 Owasco on Twitter. That's what got me laughing.
Do you guys want to be healthy? Do you guys want to know how to eat a full pizza one night plus the chocolate milkshake and then explode for the rest of the night?
Oh,
follow me.
No wonder you're Just Ingredients best customer. That was great.
A lot to get into on just how the first 7 games have gone. I guess, Skylar, we don't got a ton of time because we do have a series to tee up. So, we're still going to fly through this a little bit. But standout guys for you, I guess, starting the year.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to the pod this morning, Thursday morning, and I think you really covered it. Obviously, the bottom half, the middle third of the order, both those groups are really coming through for the Blue Jays right now, and just waiting for the big boys to heat up. I think Bichette's been incredible at sometimes. He had the 4-for-4 game earlier on as well, but just a little more consistency from him would be nice. Mixing in an offer in there is not ideal, especially as a leadoff hitter, guy that's supposed to get on base, but we didn't expect any of this from Andrus Gimenez, who's, tripled the team lead in home runs with 3, obviously. George Springer bounced back. Nobody called that except for me on our season preview pod, but I'll take my victory lap later. And everybody in the bottom of the order taking advantage of their limited at bats. Obviously Tyler Heineman, I think, is a guy that a lot of people think of for the most part. And the pitching staff, honestly, it's been pretty good. I think my biggest concern outside of the Max Scherzer injury rearing its head in his first start after a couple of innings was Jose Berrios. And I think it still kind of lingers. It won't. Obviously, we won't see him in this series against the Mets. He's probably going to start that first game against the Red Sox in that, I guess, the 4th game from now. But, Berrios went from, a very bad opening day start where he gave up a lot of contact, a lot of hard hit balls, to an 8K game, which is also not sustainable for him. That's not how he pitches. So I'm just really waiting to see where the middle is for Jose Berrios. But honestly, other than that, I got a lot of faith in this starting five, including Easton Lucas, who, gave the Blue Jays 5 scoreless, which nobody would have expected on Wednesday. And, I think the back end of the bullpen is maybe a little overworked right now, but that's the reason they've won 5 games and they've lost 2. I think there's probably some chances, in these next couple of series where they're probably 2 runs down coming into the 8th or 9th inning, and you won't see these guys. So I think that's all going to even out. But just really, really pleased with how this is going, because I think if you saw the top half of the order producing as they should or exceeding expectations, and the bottom, 2/3 of the order not doing that, I think there'd be a lot of concern. The switchback for the Blue Jays right now seems a lot more plausible than trying to go the other way. So this is a really good start for the Jays. And I mean, 3 games above 500, we'll take this, boys. Obviously, you guys were talking about this yesterday, but this was not a situation that we found ourselves in last year or even the last couple of years. So, we did exactly what we hoped they would do, best case scenario for through the first 7 games of the year.
Yeah, I think you summed up pretty much everything we've been talking about. Didn't overreact too hard to anything here, because as we looked through the first 5, the top 5 players on the Toronto Blue Jays in terms of OPS through the first 7 games, I don't think any of us would have had this on their bingo card. But you got Tyler Heineman leading it off at the first spot. Then you have George Springer, Miles Straw, Andrus, Gimenez, and Will Wagner. So quite the influx of production you're getting from the middle of the order, the bottom of the order. Miles Straw having a 3-for-4 game out of literally nowhere. Wasn't even supposed to make the roster opening day. So you're getting a lot of production. Again, there's going to be all of these people talking about how sustainable is this? Are you going to see George Springer hit 450 with that 1,000 OPS all season? Probably not. I think we can all agree for that, obviously, but we're going to enjoy it while it's in front of us, especially coming off a year in 2024 where there was not a lot to get excited about, not a lot to be happy about, even at this point of the year. Toronto Blue Jays are 5-2. They're at the top of the AL East. I don't care how early it is. It feels really good to say that.
Yeah, man. You know what? It's an interesting conversation to have, especially going off what Skylar just said too, about the top part of the order really not doing what we expect, and the bottom are overachieving. And you look at even a guy like Bichette, where I think if you just look at the numbers, you think, oh, it's not that great, but then you see his at bats and the way he's working at bats, the way he's hitting the ball hard. Like he lined out a couple times in that last game where he probably got a couple base hits, if not doubles, stolen from him. So I think that's the nice thing, is that even when you're not seeing the success immediately, you're seeing the pieces that will eventually, I think, build this squad when everybody gets on the same page into a better baseball team. And to be 5-2 to start the year, I mean, it's a great feeling to lead the AL. I don't know. At any point last year, we were never able to say this. So I'm already way more excited for this season than last. And Skylar, just looking back, we did our series preview or season preview. Would you honestly say that you expected this a 5-2 start from the Blue Jays when you look back at the schedule, or how, like, I guess in retrospect, how do you think you're feeling now into comparison to the start?
Yeah, I thought the series split with the Orioles was, kind of what I expected. Maybe not in the same way. I thought, Berrios would obviously have his stuff in the opening day start and give them, a bit of a fighter's chance there. But you kind of make that up with the Easton Lucas start. You're expecting Max Scherzer to, come out and make his second start for the Blue Jays and, be a future Hall of Famer, even if he's not going to give you a bunch of innings. And then Easton Lucas basically did anything you wanted Max Scherzer to do, and perhaps more. 5 scoreless, like, from a guy that is the third in your rotation. And I do want to give quick props to Easton Lucas, because on Monday's broadcast, Dan and Buck were talking about how Easton might be available of the bullpen on Tuesday if things got a little sideways and his name was called against the Nats, or he might be available to start on Wednesday. And obviously John Schneider probably made that decision. Maybe it was made pre-game on Tuesday, but I think Easton Lucas, 2 days before his first MLB start, one with the new team at home, started the season and the team is running hot. To have that kind of 2 mindsets. Am I coming out of the pen on Tuesday? Am I not going to be available Wednesday? Or am I going to make this big spot start for the Blue Jays? really, really impressed by what he's shown in his 15th MLB pitching appearance or whatever it was. So, you make up ground where you maybe didn't expect it to, but I agree with the Blue Jays broadcast on Wednesday. Like, if you want to show teams in the MLB that you're a real baseball club, you got to win games like that against the Nats. When you have them in a series stranglehold and you want to get that third win, which could go a long way. We've seen the Blue Jays miss the playoffs by a game or less in the last 5 years. These wins mean something, and it's kind of crazy to say when you're in like the first 2 days of April. But I thought that was really impressive. And yeah, 5-2, didn't expect that. Maybe 4-3 was probably my best case scenario, just given how the first two series play out. But I think that also says a bit about the Nats, and they were not as impressive as I thought. They might have been with the young talent they have, and Dylan Cruz was terrible in basically every facet of the game. This guy's the number 2 overall pick, that sort of thing. But the Blue Jays took care of business. 7-game homestand to start the year is not something that they're accustomed to. We're not accustomed to in this fan base, and obviously they rode that home crowd and got a win in a work from dome game. So I'm very happy, and now the real test will begin, because none of these teams that they're playing in April is an easy test.
Yeah, I'm just gonna quickly go over the schedule. I got it pulled up right here. I was gonna ask you
it's
about
gross.
Right
I went through it, and my facial expression was give me the A's or give me something. There's none of that.
No, it's literally a gauntlet. Probably like the worst schedule that you could have. Maybe throw the Dodgers in here is the only way you could have made it worse. But you have the New York Mets, obviously, who aren't playing that good of baseball. Like, they have Brandon Nimmo, who's hitting well. Juan Soto. Mark Vientos is lost. Francisco Lindor, the Torpedo bat's not doing anything for him right now. But they still have, obviously, a very good roster that could activate at any time. Boston Red Sox, a little bit of an iffy team right now, but a lot of people expect them to be very good and at least compete for the playoffs. Baltimore Orioles once again, the Atlanta Braves, the Seattle Mariners, the Houston Astros, the New York Yankees, and then the Boston Red Sox once again. So a lot of AL East opponents, a lot of playoff teams. Pretty much every team in there is a playoff team other than the Red Sox, I guess. But it's a gauntlet. It's going to really show us if this team is for real right now. You're 5-2, you're feeling really good, but you got a tough schedule. If you can stay around the 500 mark, or if you can exceed that, I think that would show a lot of fans that this team is for real this season.
Yeah, and we still got a lot to go over with this series, and what can we expect? Who's on the mound? What's going on? We're gonna dive into that right after we come back from this short break. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live. The crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of the ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. Speaking of Game Time, next Sunday, me and Skylar's booking the tickets. I'm pretty sure he's going to use Game Time, because that's where we get all of our tickets, because it's cheap, it's easier, and you get to know the total up front, so there's no surprise fees. I talk about that all the time in this, when I'm hitting this ad break with them, because it's tough when I go into a ticketing app and then I think I'm paying $40, but I'm actually paying $90. That might change my perspective on really if I really want to go. And Game Time does make that even easier. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, boys, a little series to preview here. We usually give, how we think the Jays are going to do, but I'm going to quickly go over the pitching matchups just before we continue. So today's game, we got Kevin Gausman versus McGill. Then Saturday's Bassitt and Canning, and Sunday is Bowden, Francis, and Peterson. Boys, I guess we usually do this. Which game is the standout game for you? Skylar, I'll throw it to you first. And again, this is a Mets team that we really don't know what to think of them. Are they going to be this amazing team that a lot of people expect, or are they going to drop the ball a little bit? So I guess out of these three, which one are you most looking forward to being a real test for this team, or the most interesting game, if you want to say that?
Yeah, I think it's the middle game of the series for me. Kevin Gausman versus Trevor McGill. Both of them had very strong showings in their first outings of the season. I think this Friday game will really set the tone, though. The Jays had a very good game against their only lefty starter that they faced through 7 games in Mackenzie Gore for the Washington Nationals. Obviously, they had a pretty solid game, got on the board early against him, that sort of thing. They're batting .340 against lefties right now as a team. which is pretty impressive. And that was the last starter you faced. So I'm hoping they can ride that positive momentum. I really can see 2 out of 3 for the Blue Jays in this series overall. I think, they can take advantage of, the lefty pitching again on the Friday, and then, ride that Gausman momentum and hopefully have just a great outing from the staff on Saturday. Obviously, the bullpen's going to be fully available for, 2 out of the 3 games of this series, hopefully all 3 if things are going well in the Blue Jays' favor. But I really think that, this is a good test. And then you get into those big AL East battles that, will seem big at the time, but prove even more pivotal as the season goes on. But I'm really impressed with, how the Blue Jays are shaping up into this series and take advantage of a Mets team that really hasn't found their stride yet. Obviously, it takes some teams, 4 or 5 weeks to kind of hit their stride. The Mets are, a playoff team. Obviously, I think there's no question about that with all the talent they have on their roster. If they can kind of control Juan Soto for the most part, who just is allergic to being out, like whether it's walks or hits. He's been fantastic. Everything that they've expected of him. I think they can take advantage of this pitching staff. I'll probably be hitting a couple of overs on FanDuel, at least on Friday and Sunday. And hopefully Saturday is a good pitching showdown.
Yeah, I'm excited for this series. The New York Mets, they lost a series to the Houston Astros and just survived winning a series against the Miami Marlins, going to the 11th inning in the 3rd game of that series. For me, the matchup here that I'm looking at is it's actually the last one. It is against the lefty as well, David Peterson. I want to see how they can hit that lefty. I think I like the Kevin Gausman against McGill matchup, and I don't think Griffin Canning's good. I just don't care. He had an okay outing. I don't think he's very good. So I think that Chris Bassitt, I like that pitching matchup for the Toronto Blue Jays. And baseball is a game that is so streaky. You have teams that are on fire at some points, and then you have guys and teams that just aren't hitting or aren't pitching very well. The New York Mets, I'm not going to say they aren't playing amazingly, or they're not, sorry, I'm not going to say that they're playing horribly, but they're definitely not playing up to their standard right now. We get the Atlanta Braves later on. Hopefully they continue to fall as well. So it really depends on when you do get some of these teams, especially when they are in the NL and you only get them once a year, because they could be having a very good month of April, but then you get them in July and they're playing horribly. So I think right now with the New York Mets, the way they are playing and the pitching matchups that you do have, I think this is another scenario. The Toronto Blue Jays are in a good spot to win another series and take 2 out of 3 against the New York Mets.
Well, and we talk about this all the time, right? Baseball is a game of who's hot, who's not, right? And right now, the Mets, I would say, aren't the hottest team in the world. So I think it is the appropriate time for the Blue Jays to take advantage of that and possibly get a win. I actually like both of your takes. I think the Saturday and the Sunday game are both very interesting. I think the Friday one, I could see this being a Blue Jays win, and that's what I'm going to call for that one. But I am interested to see how Bowden Francis pitches, to be honest with you. I think he was a guy I had a little bit of question marks. What Bowden Francis were we going to get? And I think in game 1, he proved that he's here and ready to do it again. But the consistency, that's my biggest question with him. So that's probably not only the game, but the guy I'm most interested to see what he can bring to the table in this series. And yeah, I think it's, can this Blue Jays team keep the momentum that they have drawn from these first 7 games and, keep it up? I know we've talked about the bottom of the order and how great they've been middle to bottom of the order. I think this series is going to depend on, hey, can our big guys step up? At some point, we need to expect them to. And this would be the appropriate time against, if Vladimir Guerrero Jr. wants to pit himself against Juan Soto in contract terms, well, let's see if you can outplay him in this series.
Yeah, I could point.
I completely agree. Just one thing quickly about the Mets series. I think the fact that you're shifting outdoors, obviously, for the first time in your 8th game of the season, is notable. I think that does, give an advantage to 2 guys in the Blue Jays top 3, not necessarily Bichette, who could hit the ball over the field. We've seen that over the first 7 games of the season, but I think definitely for Anthony Santander and also for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., maybe getting outside and in that fresh air, even though it's going to be cold out, might be good for the power bats in the Blue Jays lineup. Very interested to see how this affects a guy like Bowden Francis, who did not have a good start to the 2024 season. And then obviously as the temperature heated up in Toronto and you're pitching more games outside of the Rogers Center, he can really rely on that stuff. We've seen the Jays in the past at Citi Field struggle. I know Kevin Gausman had a tough outing last year against the New York Mets where he got kind of knocked around because he couldn't rely on his stuff as much. So I think that's going to be the one thing I'm really watching on Friday. for Bowden Francis. But I think at the same time, it lends itself an opportunity for the Blue Jays big bats to maybe get going as well.
See, one thing I want to see from the series is the Toronto Blue Jays have 5 home runs through 7 games, and 3 of them are from Andrus Gimenez. Let's see Vladdy hit a nuke. Let's see Bichette. Let's see one of the big dogs hit a nuke and kind of activate for this series. Let's get a little bit more of that power. Obviously, I'm loving what I'm seeing from Andrus Gimenez, but let's spread a little bit of love throughout the lineup. Let's launch some bombs at Citi Field when we're playing the New York Mets. But Braden, got anything else to kind of add before we take off for this Friday episode?
No, I appreciate everybody tuning in for this episode. I know a little different, right? We don't really cover the entirety of the league, a big question all the time throughout the entire of the MLB, but it was fun. It's fun to get into the weeds on this kind of stuff. And Skylar, appreciate you popping on. Again, follow us on Twitter, Braden5 Wasco, Carter First 2, Skylar A. Peters, as well as the Locked On Blue Jays Twitter account. You can follow that at Locked On Jays. Yeah, we'll be back on Monday. We got lots more to talk about, obviously, with this Blue Jays season heating up, and Skylar will be back here and there throughout the year, giving us his opinions, his takes, his what we can call expert insights, and his betting knowledge. Thanks again, big guy.